Here's what I'm doing. This week's video, the 1066 Tractor Series video, is going to be totally about the torque amplifier. I have torn the torque amplifier apart, and that's what you're going to see in this week's video, is me tearing that apart, what I found, what I didn't find. I do have other footage of some other things that I've got going on. I was able to clean the housing for the transmission up with a power washer, and I've got some other parts in for the tractor. But this week's video is strictly going to be about me tearing the torque amplifier apart, how I think it works or why it works, and kind of what I think is wrong with it. You're going to see, I'll probably include another clip into it. This will be the intro clip. I'll add another clip into it about what I think is wrong with it, and we'll go from there. If any of you don't know what the torque amplifier is, it's kind of a way of increasing the torque of the tractor. Now, let's equate it to a two-speed rear end in a semi-truck, where you have maybe 8 gears and then a high and low range in the rear end. It's kind of equates to that. It actually adds more torque into the same gear ratio. With that being said, anybody that knows the 1066 realizes that there is a high and low range in the rear end. So the torque amplifier is before the gears and the rear end, and it actually increases the torque of going into the gearbox and the rear end before you select a gear and select the high or low range of the rear end. So here we go, and I'm going to include another clip of me talking about what I found, what I didn't find, what I think, what I don't think, and how it equates to my problems. So I'll bring you back. One of the things that I wanted to do for this new torque amplifier is get some numbers off of it. One of the viewers has a friend that rebuilds these things, and we'll see if he had anything to do with it. So one of the numbers is inside of the assembly housing carriage, and it's 40986. And I thought I saw another. There is a stamp up here also, but it's not very good. Looked like it could have been a D, a E, and it looks like OO. The stamp wasn't crooked, so it didn't actually stamp the bottom half of it. And I thought there was one other number. Oh yeah. Let me flip this over and I'll get that for you. Here is that number, is 380235, and it's either P1 or R1. So it's 380233, P or R1. And that's the only numbers that I've seen on this thing. But I'm going to start tearing that old one apart now, and start tearing that old one apart. You know what I'm going to do is, maybe before I do that, I've got some Hydran oil in a little oil can that I put
lubricated the housing after I power washed it and put it back up on the stand. So I think I'm going to do the same thing to this. I'm going to put a little of that High-Tran fluid around that. It actually kind of, there is a, it feels like a grease on it, but I just want to double protect it. Okay, so let's take a look at this old TA. I'm not quite ready to pull it apart yet, but these 3 holes are where those tubes went. Now this top hole is for lubrication. The middle hole is for the direct drive flow port, and the bottom hole is for the TA port. Now I'm probably going to have to get this off of here, this band that I put on there, which should have been down there, but regardless of the point, we'll take them apart and see how they're fed from inside. Okay, so I got that band off of there. This thing should come off of here now. Oh. Look at what I'm seeing in here. These are those pawls that, this is the one that fell out originally when I didn't get that band down far enough and into there. But look at them. Can you, hopefully you can see, there's some that are like worn right in half. Let me see if I can get this out of here. Wow. Let me go get a pair of needle nose pliers and we'll pull them pawls out of there before we take a look at those ports. Those hydraulic tube ports. We'll do this first. Let me go get a pair of needle nose pliers. Well, that one's pretty intact. And that one's pretty intact. And here's a piece of this one. Can I get this out of here? Yeah. These things are so destroyed, I don't even know how they were supposed to be in there, or where they were supposed to be in there. So I have an O-ring here or something. Not an O-ring, it's, nah, yeah, it is flexible. Brittle, hard. Not like a typical rubber type of material. Okay, that's that for now. Let's go look at the other side of this top part. Okay, so I found out where they're supposed to be. When I flip this part over, here they are. Here's the rest of them. And these pieces aren't pieces of the pawl, they're pieces of the retainer brackets. Here, I can show you one. Well, bad light. See the L-shaped bracket? Let me see if I can see it. No, you're supposed to be able to. You said you should be able to lift the gear off of there. I'd like to be able to get that gear out of there. Is it pressed on? So let me see. This thing would have, yeah, that's how that sits, and that holds that like that. So, let me bring you back. I could have sworn I read the manual and it talked about once you pull this housing off, you're supposed to be able to pull the gear off. Let me go review that. So I was wrong. This with this gears and bearing. They do come out, but you have to remove these seals to get them to come out. That's not what they were talking about when they said it should pick right up out of it. I've kind of been messing around with these oil ports, and what it is the top one goes to lubrication, and it kind of goes back at an angle in between this bushing back there and these oil let's call them oil galleys. What it is a bushing with holes in it, and the top and bottom ones go into it. The bottom one appears to go into the back side, and the middle one comes into this, let's call it the front side. And as you can note on the shaft, there's an oil port here and an oil port there. So it feeds into those oil ports, and again the top one was just for lubrication, so I'm assuming what it is doing is lubricating the inside of this unit, and it is sealed with a maybe it's not sealed. I'm not sure why they're putting lubrication on the inside. So what I want to do is pull that clutch pack apart, though. How those pawls got destroyed like that, I'm not really sure. I'm kind of not really sure what they are. They're apparently like a bearing, but why would they not put a bearing in there and put that instead? But think about that, and let me see if I can get this clutch pack apart. one of the things yesterday is, well, okay, so some of this video was shot yesterday, logically, when I said that. One of the things that I noticed when I downloaded the videos from the camera yesterday is you really couldn't see those holes that I was talking about in the sleeve where the hydraulic tubes feed in for lubrication, TA assistance, and main gear lockup. So these are those holes that I was talking about in that bushing. There's a bushing and then there's another bushing before it. So one of the holes goes into you're probably not gonna, I'm gonna probably blind you here, and you're not gonna be able to see it, but that top hole is for lubrication. The middle hole is for main gear lockup, and the bottom hole is for the TA assistance. I think that's right. But hopefully this is a better shot and you're able to see those tubes, and those tubes go in and feed the shaft. The shaft actually has holes in it, as you can see, and it feeds in. Now one of them is a direct drive. That's what I was talking about, the main gear lockup. It's a direct drive, and then the other one is for the TA, and the TA is going to work these pistons. Now I'm going to pull this apart so you can actually see this. So I'll bring you back for that. This could be a little bit of an issue getting this snap ring back in here. Man, the thing is pretty stout. Yeah. Okay. Well, it looks like some burning marks on it. It's just the retainer plate, and it's got springs on it. Thing sure has gotten hot though. Look at the tempering marks around the outside of it. Blue. I'm not sure if that's not the way it's supposed to be though. Looks like a brass. Next plate. This thing is exactly like, kind of like a dual disc clutch that you would put in a like a truck. So, are these things pistons? Is that what the hydraulic fluid does, is push these things out? Okay, let me bring you back. I'm probably gonna pull these bolts and stuff apart and see what's inside of it. See how that oil from the shaft interacts with this clutch assembly. Yeah. Let me bring you back. So what I'm going to do is take these bolts out of here for you. There's some, this is going to be a little challenging because this thing is, wants to wobble all over the place. But there's more clutch plates in here. Then I'll pull apart the other side and it's got the pistons in it. I'm not going to show you all of this. I'll bring you back when I get these pinned back over and start loosening them up. Okay, so I got them loose. It's not that they were that tight, but it was a little bit of a pain because the thing kept wanting to roll. I mean, if you were doing this on a regular basis, you probably have some kind of a fixture jig to kind of hold it in place. There's kind of a section in the manual about taking this thing apart. They talk about taking apart, inspecting the clutches and doing stuff like that. They don't tell you what the parts are though. So again, I'm still stuck on this thing whether we're going to give this thing back to that guy for a core. He hasn't charged me anything, but I've got to give it back to him. It'd be nice if I could hold that down somehow. Like that. So it's dual springs on this thing. Not sure how, man, it's hard to get that thing out of there. I'm going to put them inside of here. Okay, so this looks like, maybe not. I was going to say that looks like a piston. Oh, there wasn't a spring missing. That's for the bolts. So we've got 3, 6, 9 pins, 3, 6, 9 springs. Yep. Now we're going to get down into let me bring you back and we'll pull this part apart and take a look at those pistons. This is kind of what you got to do to stop the thing from rolling. Okay, so how does that come apart? Since the bolts were in that way, look at that gunk in there. This could be hard to see, but there was a gasket, and the pistons do push out. There's a gasket, and it looks like an O-ring. Let me, what I'm going to do is grab the other camera so that I can see that you can see what's going on. This camera that is being filmed right now doesn't have a viewer on it, a viewfinder on it. Let me bring
Okay, so here we are back at this thing again with the other camera, and I can see that you can see right here is, let me get it in better light for you. Right there is the oil port that goes into this groove. Now I've got to assume what the pressure does is, because this groove goes all the way around and comes up under them pistons, then there's an O-ring, like an O-ring type of thing, if you can see it there, that seals the piston like. So on the back of the piston, there's a groove that comes under here, and what it does is it probably pressurizes the backside of that piston, pushing it out. Pushing it out that way against the back of those clutch plates. Now, see here again, let me take you on the other side of the pistons, and I'm going to show you something that I noticed when I kind of took this thing apart, but I really didn't say anything about it. This piston has almost like no wear where it was pushed out against, where like this one has a huge pattern of wear. So it looks like this one, a little bit of this one, a little bit of this one, almost nothing on that one, and almost nothing on that one. But it looks like the 1, 2, 3, 4 were the predominant, maybe 1, 2, 3 were predominant, 4, 5, 6 weren't getting as much contact pressure. I gotta tell you, I mean, it's a way of achieving this, but putting a channel in this thing on the backside of the piston and sealing it with a gasket and O-rings doesn't seem like a very efficient way of getting that done, or it could be susceptible to a lot going wrong. I mean, if that gasket gets pushed down into the channel, it's going to block one or more of the pistons. Man, I don't know. But anyways, there's how it works. So anyway, one of these ports are fed in here, and it comes out that hole, which is over here, and pressurizes those pistons to push out against the clutch plates in there. So there it is. Now all I've got to do is try and get it back together. Of course, I could just put the outside back together and tell them, yeah, here it is. Leave a little note in there for whoever rebuilds the thing. Hey, I was here. I
I'll
told
bring
you
it
I'd
back.
bring you back, and then I want to just show you one other thing. This is that plate where that rests against the pistons, and you can actually see it. You can see that this one, and kind of this one were predominant. I mean, you got more contact pressure of the piston against the plate. This one, you can tell that it was very little contact pressure. Maybe this one just a little bit more, and then this one a little bit more than that one. So you had three predominant pistons in this thing, and then three of them with lesser degree of pressure against that plate. So yeah, I'm not saying that it's cause of anything. I'm just saying that could have probably been a more efficient way of working them pistons than that. I mean, it seems like the way that they designed this thing is really susceptible to problems. I don't know. Maybe other people have an opinion about it too. Voice it. Leave a comment. Okay, I know this has turned out to be a very long video, and let's just kind of wrap up what I found and what I didn't find. We found those pawls inside of the TA. That housing had been worn out, and probably the pawls were misplaced inside of that TA while it was intact. Regardless of when I pulled it apart, whether some of the pawls fell out, they were probably disintact, displaced to begin with. What else did we find? The clutch plates, without having a reference clutch plate to look at, they look kind of good to me. I mean, there was some wear on them, but how much wear, I'm not really sure, unless I saw an original new clutch plate to see how thick it was. But the clutch plates actually look fairly good. What I found in the pistons, though, was that gasket and those O-ring seals didn't look like they had been intact. Now, I realized that I pulled that thing apart, and it probably pulled that gasket apart and pulled some of those O-rings apart. But I got to tell you the truth, it looked like that gasket and those O-rings were not right to begin with. I mean, it looked like they were leaking, and that gasket was very deteriorated. So I'm not really sure how it sealed the back of them pistons that well. And so maybe that's some of the problem. Maybe it wasn't sealing the back of them pistons that well, and when that hydraulic pressure went in to activate them pistons, it was actually leaking by the O-rings in the gasket and escaping someplace else. Now, is there a check for that? I'm not really sure. Is there like a pressure test that you could have put onto the thing to make sure what the cause of it was? Again, I'm not really sure. The other thing is the way that they activated them pistons. You know, I mean, very little surface area for that oil in that trough underneath that piston to be pushing on that piston. Now, does it work? It must work, because there was pressure marks from the piston against the back of the plate. But then again, there's 6 pistons, and there was really only 3 defined pressure points against that plate from pistons. Now, was that a problem? Again, the wear on the clutch plates didn't look offset. So, and it happened to be that the 3 pistons that looked like they were predominantly pushing against the plate were evenly spaced out. So maybe it worked out that way. So my problem to begin with was I would get on the tractor, start it up, and Sometimes it would engage in gear and sometimes it wouldn't. But I would know once I got on the tractor and started it up, before I even tried to engage it in gear, whether it was going to work or not, because the hydraulic steering wouldn't be working if it wasn't going to work. So, is the TA the primary cause of what my issue was? I'm not really sure. Until I put it back together, I'm not really sure of what the problem was. I would love to be able to see a TA that had been rebuilt, or them rebuilding a TA to see what modifications they make to it. Apparently they do some machining to it. Now, is that machining in that back of that piston port for the oil to get to energize them pistons? That would be my primary concern. Looking at that thing, that looks like it could be a fault in the TA. But again, I would love to see it, see how they modified it, see what to look for inside of a TA that could have been causing the problem. Again, the tractor sometimes would work, sometimes wouldn't work. When the tractor worked, I would engage the TA and it would work. Now, did I ever pull with the TA? No. I mean, I drove the tractor and engaged the TA and it worked. Did I ever hook up a plow to it and see if it would actually work when under load? No. Or even like a pulling sled, taking it out to a pole and trying to pull with it to see what issues there was with it. All I know is that it would engage with no load, and you could drive the tractor with it engaged or disengaged and it would work fine. But again, I'm not sure under load. So there was issues inside of that TA. There was definite issues. Not only the pawls, but there was issues. It looked like there was issues with the way that hydraulic fluid was feeding the pistons and the gaskets and O-rings that were supposed to be sealing it. So we're going to be putting it back together, and we'll get the tractor back together and do the other things that need to be done to it, and we'll see. You know, my first thought was the hydraulic pump in the thing, and that could still be the issue, but that issue could be fixed relatively easy. I don't have to pull the TA housing or the transmission housing off of the tractor to fix that hydraulic pump. All I've got to do is pull the plate off and pull the pump out and put it all back together if I have to replace the pump. Or I might even decide in the process of putting the tractor back together to replace the pump anyway. So, but I kind of really don't want to do that. I would like to keep that stock pump and just do the TA, and because if it works, then we know that it wasn't the hydraulic pump, it was the TA or something. It could be something to do with that oil. Again, when I pulled that TA apart, I found that residue inside of the TA, that grayish material, oil material, grayish material in the oil. I'm still not sure where that came from, but anyways, enough of this video. I'm going to be putting it back together again, and we'll continue on with that. There's a lot of things that have to be done, and we'll continue on with that. So I'll bring you back.